So how do you start a successful podcast that allows you to build your name online, build your network, and also helps you bring in leads, customers, and generate a huge audience that is going to love you and love the content you put out? That's the question we aim to solve on this podcast, the Podcast Domination Show. And my goal is to help you figure out what works in growing and monetizing a show and help you implement those strategies in your show today. My name is Luis Diaz. I am pumped to have you here on the Podcast Domination Show. So let's get into today's episode. All right. What is going on, my friend? Welcome back to the Podcast Domination Show. We are covering essentially step numero 3. We covered blueprinting, then we did building the podcast, and now we are covering branding the podcast. And with this we're going to cover 2 things here today. Number 1 is going to be about the actual look and feel of the podcast, meaning the social media templates or how you are going to go about creating those, and some tips along that line. And then also your website, some 4 parts to include on your website if you're going to build one from scratch. And then last but not least, we're going to cover a little bit about music, where to get it, some of the best places, some tips you want to include or think about when you're picking music. And then also last but not least is, if you don't want to build a website, what are some other options for you that you can do that are really easy and low cost? So without further ado, my friend, we're going to jump right into social media assets, meaning what you're posting on social media to promote the show, and the real reason why behind why you're actually posting these. And I can tell you right now, it's not really good to grow your podcast, because I'll be honest with you, I'll let you know a little secret. Posting on social media does not really do much for podcast downloads per se. What it does do is it helps with awareness that you actually have a podcast, because frankly, most people on Facebook or Twitter or social media and other places, not all of them go and listen to podcasts. Unfortunately, I know it sounds crazy, because why wouldn't you listen to a podcast? But some people are too busy. Some people just don't know how to. Some people are just too stupid. Some people are just ignorant. Some people just have had bad experiences with podcasts. Maybe they listen to the sucky ones. However, nevertheless, you are going to post your social media, your podcast content on social media to give them the content in the way they like it, to serve it to them on the platter which they use, or on the platter which they consume content, right? So this is why converting it into Instagram stories, Instagram TV clips, converting into Facebook posts, into Facebook videos, into YouTube channel content, into Twitter posts, into Pinterest stuff, Pinterest like quote cards. This is all super important. And the fact of the matter is, you're doing that to reach new audiences with the same content, just repurposed. Like I said, it's not going to move the needle really when it comes to downloads, but it is going to help your show's awareness and growth and getting your message out there. So here's the key. If your sales message is good, which I covered in an episode with Daxi about the power of the sales message and why you have to have a powerful message in general, whether that's you're a nonprofit and you're trying to start a movement, or you're actually selling something, or you're trying to help people do something through using one of your products and services. That message is so powerful, because guess what? If you have a great message and you have a podcast, you can clip that out and you can share that message on other platforms using repurposed content, and it's still highly, highly effective. So more so than the actual medium that people are using to consume, you need to be focused on the message, because then we can take that sales message, we can take that movement message, and we can convert it into Instagram stories, Instagram TV content, Facebook content, YouTube content, whatever it may be. And it's going to help you get more traction. So the real reason why you're posting on social media is, again, to get awareness and build this social capital amongst other listeners who are just listening on other platforms. Number 2 is to actually use it to share and promote your guest. So your guest is going to have a social media presence as well, and they're going to want to share, and they're going to want to, you're going to want them to share, actually. So creating this stuff is also in service to them as well. And if you have a solo episode or solo podcast, it still applies to you, because the fact of the matter is, likely you will come across a time where you want to have a guest on, and you're going to need to create stuff for them so they can share the experience with their audience as well. So that's the 2 real reasons why you're actually creating content and repurposing this stuff on social media. And it's why those social media assets, those templates you use to actually repost and share are actually important. So branding piece number one, that's that. Number two, when it comes to places to promote on your podcast or when you're launching, especially, a couple things you can do to help promotion in a very passive way. Number one, take a look at the real estate you own. So things like Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, your email banners, your website banners, all of that can actually be leveraged in a sense to get your podcast out there more, even if it's just a trailer episode that's up, right? So a couple episodes we talked about why you should get your trailer episode up and onto iTunes as fast as possible, or Apple Podcasts as fast as possible, and all the other places. If you have that in place and now you have this banner that says go to iTunes and search blah, blah, blah podcast, you will show up, and then people will actually be able to subscribe right away without having to wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, and then they have to come back to it. So your Facebook group banner, that can be leveraged. Your LinkedIn banner can be leveraged. Your YouTube banner, your email, and your website. 5 places right there that you can get free promotion on your social platforms for your new podcasts. All it takes is maybe going to Fiverr or building these yourselves in a place like Canva. That way you can get the message out there. You can send people with a simple little picture of your artwork that says go to iTunes, search launch coming soon, or something to that effect. So another tip right there in terms of branding, in terms of building these visual assets out for your podcast. Next, like we talked about recently or before when we mentioned this episode, the music for your show and the importance of the music for your show is twofold. Number one, it's going to help your listener get into the right mood. So when you have a podcast that has the music to match the mood, it actually helps the listener, in my belief, really get them into the right mindset to absorb your content. Because if they're frustrated and they're pissed off, it's going to be hard to get them to listen to maybe gratitude or something along that line. But if you have music that kind of puts them in a trance, that gets them thinking and feeling in a more gratuitous way, it's going to help you ease that messaging, kind of massage the messaging into them. It's also a part of audio branding. So every time someone hears that music, they're now going to think of your show if they've listened to it over and over again. So it's a part of your identity online as well. So audio branding, don't forget, that's why it's really important. Some places you can go to find this stuff. So I get a lot of my music from Pond 5. You can also use places like Audio Jungle. Here's another one. I think it's called not SoundCloud, but Sound Junk. No. We'll just keep it simple. We'll just keep it Audio Jungle, Pond 5. Check out those 2 places. There's tons of music there for you. And if you just type in music for podcasts on Google, tons will come up. So just some tips there for the music side of things. And last thing I want to cover on today's short episode for branding is website branding. So when it comes to, if you're building a brand new podcast website, here's 4 things you need to include, or should I say 4 pages you want to include. Number 1, an about the podcast page. So this is an about page, but it's for your podcast. So what's the podcast about? Who is it for? What does it do? What are the top episodes? Why did you create it? Those kind of questions to be answered on this kind of page. That's the podcast page. A good reference is to go to GaryVee's podcast page. And I love the way he's built that out. It's a great intro kind of page to, if you're new to his show, to check out. Number 2 is a contact page. So for sponsorships, for new guests, for just getting in touch with you, maybe they want to work with you, there needs to be a very simple, clear contact page. You don't want to hide this page. It should be really easy. You want to elicit this. Number 3 is an episodes page. So having a separate episodes page that stores all of your content from past episodes, essentially your back catalog, is huge. Couple things you want to include on these pages. Number 1, a media player. Number 2, some subscribe buttons to your top podcast directories: Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts as well. You don't want all of them, but I have a bunch of them on mine, so you can check out my page, lewisryan.com, and see if you like that setup as well. And then that's the episode page. And then last but not least is the media page. So a media page is a page that gives your content information. So whenever you're on other podcasts, you send them the link to that page and it has everything under the sun. For example, it has your pictures, like some good headshots of you. It'll have links of past podcasts you've been on. It'll have your official bio. It'll have a suggested intro. So for when they want to introduce you, you want to pre-frame that and control the narrative. And that's something I learned from Craig Ballantyne. So shout out to Craig, amazing coach I've had the fortune to work with this past couple of years. But a lot of times he talks about controlling the narrative and controlling how you get introduced. And this is huge. So having a suggested introduction that a host can read off is super important because it's going to pre-frame you in the right direction, and it doesn't allow for people to screw up, essentially. So we've covered picture, bio, links to past podcasts, your intro, a couple other things you want to have on this page is links to your social media. So where people can contact you, that way they can include that in their show notes and keep it really simple for them. So it's just a one-click copy and paste, or 2 clicks, I should say. And then anything else they need to know about you. Maybe you have a free gift for listeners. Maybe you have some topics and questions you love answering and you know it's going to bring a lot of value. So include some talking points on there, or topics and questions. And then also, obviously, if you have a free gift, you want to link it there. Maybe it's a PDF or free download, and give it a title. Like for me, for example, it's like my 0 to 100K launch slideshow, which is a slide deck I have that I teach people how to go from 0 to 100K downloads, step by step. Basically, it's like a skeleton of my book with a few other more updated versions of it, or points to it. So that essentially is the media page. And then I think also, before I forget, if you don't want to start a podcast website, which is totally cool, I agree with you, it's a lot of work. You can also do a Facebook group and then just drive traffic to there. You can do a ClickFunnels page, or you can use a website from your hosting provider, whether that's Libsyn or SimpleCast. We have clients that use both of those. I love both of those companies, and they both provide pretty awesome websites you can leverage. So you don't have to pay for anything extra. You're just getting it from your hosting provider. So that's it for that, my friend. That's branding 101 in a podcast. And I know some people may have a different definition of branding. I use that word to just basically discuss all of the visual and audio assets outside of the content that you're creating for the podcast. So that's how I kind of define it. Last step next week will be blast off. So blast off, the pre-promotion phase, how to go about marketing, how to set up your contest, how to plan your stuff on social media. And I'm also going to share with you my top 5 hacks for pre-launching the podcast. So stay tuned for that. It's super high valuable information. And I guarantee you no one else is talking about this shit. So quite frankly, guys, that's why you should stick around. I am a little cocky, I know. Oh, and last thing we're going to cover next week is the low, mid, high hanging fruit strategy. So this is a 3-pronged approach to reaching everybody in your market and getting the word out as far as possible in a very scalable manner. So very cool. And I will catch you later, my friend. Toodles. Until then, stay tuned for the next episode. I'll see you later. Bye. Hey, don't forget, I have a number of free bonuses for you. These are free templates, guides, and stuff that I've actually included in my recent book, How to Get Your First 100,000 Downloads in 100 Days. But you don't even have to buy the book. I'm just going to give this to you for free. All you have to do is go to LuisRyan, LuisRyan.com/book. There is a simple form where you fill out your name and your email, and you get a ton of free stuff, all the templates and guides that I included in the book, but you don't have to buy the book. So you're saving yourself a chunk of money that literally will take you probably less than 2 minutes to accomplish or perform. So enjoy that. That's my gift to you. Use it. Don't just let it fall by the wayside, and I'll see you on the next episode.